A little breaking news edition here on JAKIB Sports on Football 24/7, or a breaking news version of Birds 365, a little after hours. The Eagles have officially made their offensive line coach hiring after Jeff Stoutland went his separate way, and Chris Kuper will replace the legendary offensive line coach Jeff Stoutland in Philadelphia. He has been the O-line coach in Minnesota for the last 4 years. We'll get into everything about him. John, your first reaction to the Eagles hiring Chris Kuper to replace Jeff Stoutland as their offensive line coach?
Well, I think you hit a difficult spot. Obviously, replacing a guy who's considered a legend in Philadelphia. And the Eagles are kind of piecemealing Stoutland's duties, if you think about it. Chris Kuper will be the offensive line coach. Ryan Mahaffey will be the run game coordinator and then also coach the tight end. So a little bit of a different feel. Yeah, I mean, kind of what I didn't mean to bring this up this morning, but I did. Kind of like I said, if you pay attention to the league, it's like, all right, he's out there in Minnesota and he's in here in Philadelphia, and it's kind of the shuffling of the deck chairs around the league. Not in love with the hire simply because, that's been the issue with Minnesota has been the offensive line. If you look at Sam Darnold winning the Super Bowl in Seattle, he won 14 games in Minnesota last year, but kind of fell apart in the playoffs because that offensive line fell apart. It's mainly been the interior. They do have good tackles. They have had good tackles in Minnesota, at least until Christian Darrisaw tore his ACL. But the interior has been a problem for years. And, to not pile on too much, he did deal with a lot of injuries this year. They signed Ryan Kelly, who's a veteran, really good center, Alabama guy. So
yeah,
you'll know
I think
him.
their starting lineup only played like 80 snaps together this year, John?
Yeah, very few snaps together because of so many injuries.
He was fired. John, was he fired from Minnesota this year? Is that?
Yeah, he was. He was under contract, and they decided to make a change. They phrased it, I believe, as we're going to move on from Chris Kuper, and they had brought in Keith Carter, who's been an offensive line coach with the Jets and the Titans, as the assistant. You could see they were sort of grooming him to take over. So. Yeah, it's tough to live up to Stoutland's reputation, but they did have some issues on the offensive line in Minnesota. I think that's fair to point out.
Yeah, well, we'll see. It's already a tough enough job. I think if you leave the Jeff Stoutland stuff out of it, John, is it a good hire? It's tough to tell because I'm more with you where players do matter more, but it doesn't seem like he had a whole lot. Who's his best story there? Is it Christian Darrisaw, who's a Pro Bowler? Or is that kind of who you look to?
He was a first-round pick, so he's expected to be a big time
Darrisaw
tackle.
was, you mean, right?
Yeah. And he did develop. Again, he tore his ACL and struggled to get back from it, missed a bunch of games this year because, so we'll see if he gets back to where he was. But he was certainly, one of the top left tackles in football at his height. And then Brian O'Neill is a veteran player, is a very good right tackle, and has been, but he was a very good player before Kuper even arrived. So he kind of inherited him. The issues have been in the offensive line. Because I still have friends in Minnesota, and I can tell you.
Yeah, you worked, for those who don't know, you covered the Vikings for quite a bit of time. So you're obviously well connected there. Yep.
And specifically, you're talking about Garrett Bradbury, who was a first-round pick who did not play well in Minnesota. And, he's New England center, and they're in the Super Bowl. And then they drafted a guy by the name of Ed Ingram in the second round, who was just an abject disaster in the Vikings. And he started on the Texans offensive line this year and really played a lot better than he played in Minnesota. I don't want to pick on the guy, but that's the kind of thing that people notice, and that's the kind of thing that why Minnesota moved on, because they're like, well, Bradbury's playing better in New England, Ingram's playing better in Houston. What went on here? Now, in his defense, Donovan Jackson, they took Donovan Jackson from Ohio State in the first round last year. He had a very good rookie season. So there's some positives. I don't want to pile on and say all negatives, but that has been, and if you look at the disappointment of the 2024 season with Sam Darnold, Sam got the blame, but if you look at that Detroit game in Week 18, if you look at that playoff game against the Rams, he was under siege because of the interior issues on the offensive line.
Yes, he was. There's no doubt about it. For a little bit, for those just checking in, for those who have no idea who Chris Kuper is, which I imagine that's most of our listeners today. Chris Kuper, here's the full profile. He's 43 years old. He's originally from Anchorage, Alaska. How about that? College, North Dakota Fighting Hawks, and he was drafted in the 5th round in 2006. How about that, to the Denver Broncos? 8 seasons, all with Denver. He started in 79 games, and his final 2 seasons he spent blocking for Peyton Manning. How about that? And then he started his coaching career in 2016. He's been the Vikings O-line coach for 4 years, from 2022 to 2026. All right. And then the catch here, which me and John just talked about a little bit, is the Vikings did quietly let him go 3 weeks ago after the season, and the O-line has struggled there in Minnesota. So there's the context of it. And then the added context is his starting O-line did only play 84 snaps together all season. So let's see. And then, as John mentioned, he did have a couple former O-linemen who went on to succeed elsewhere in 2025. John, we've talked a lot about Jeff Stoutland being, old school power run and the scheme that we had here in Philly the last couple of years. As many as some people didn't like it, the Eagles have been very successful with it. And now they've made the shift to Sean Mannion, to Josh Grizzard, to Mahaffey, and now to Kuper. Does he fit the offensive evolution, John? Is he a scheme fit for what we believe the Eagles are now going to run on offense?
Yeah, real quick before I get to that, the only thing I think you missed in his background, he was on Vic Fangio's staff in Denver.
Oh, there you go.
There's some familiarity there. He was the assistant offensive line coach when Vic was the head coach there. So I'll just add that. But
there you go. Good piece of info.
Yeah, he does have, Kevin O'Connell obviously runs a similar scheme to what the Eagles are projecting to run with Sean Mannion. So he does have more experience in that style, the wide zone stretch,
Right.
cutback style of running game. But again, Minnesota's run game has not been that effective overall over, his 4-year stint. The best year would have been 2024 with, they won 14 games. So obviously, and Aaron Jones had a very good season. Last season, Aaron was banged up, and Jordan Mason was okay, but not the most dominating run game. It's been an issue with them over the entire really Kevin O'Connell regime, which is Chris came there with Kevin O'Connell. So, I from the standpoint, if you're looking at results, the results are not great in Minnesota. But again, that doesn't always tell the story.
Right.
It doesn't tell the whole story. I think the positive, I'm going to spin it. I'll go back to it. I think Donovan Jackson looked really good this season. He's got a really good chance to be a very good offensive lineman in this league. And I would say that's a feather in his cap. And then there's been, because of those injuries, some of the backups have been better than people realize, like Blake Brandell.
Yeah, Blake. I was going to say Blake Brandell. I thought he was there with him.
Yeah, who's very versatile. He can play every position, sort of like a Brett Toth type, but he's got more experience and he's probably a higher level. And he played center last year. He can play guard. He's played tackle. So there's some positives. But I think, from the standpoint, it's similar to what Minnesota thought from the quarterback position. They're like, why couldn't we get as much out of Bradbury and Ingram as other teams got? And I think that was sort of the tipping point of them moving in a different direction.
John, excuse my ignorance here with this next question, but I do wonder this, and hey, maybe it might be a dumb question. It really might be. He blocked for Peyton Manning for 2 years. Now, that was a long time ago, and he wasn't a coach, but does being an offensive lineman for a guy as elite and high caliber as Peyton Manning, especially the way he played the game, does that give you anything when you're coaching in the league now? Is there anything to take from it that could be a positive, or is that just part of his history?
I think it's just part of his history. I mean, it's never a bad thing to play with a great quarterback, but as an offensive lineman, you've got a pretty defined, clear role. You're not worried about, the things that Peyton Manning has to worry about as far as, where the receivers need to be on each play and things like that. You're hyper focused on just what you're trying to accomplish. So, but I never think being around great players and how they go about their work and profession hurts you. And obviously, he as you mentioned, played 8 seasons in the NFL, and he was quickly in the coaching ranks. So he was identified early on as the
Right.
kind of guard, and he was a pretty good player as the kind of guy who could transition to coaching. Like AJ Brown was saying out at the Super Bowl, sometimes change is a good thing, and everybody's got a shelf life, and Stoutland's been here for so long, and everybody's heard his messaging. Now they'll hear a different type of messaging. And the one thing that Chris Kuper's got going here, at least if guys are healthy, he's got much more talent here overall.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
he's
I mean,
gonna
John,
he's gonna
I think I saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, you might not know, may know, 16 different O-line combinations this year, I think, for Cooper in Minnesota. I mean, I know
Yeah, I
there
don't
was
know how
also
many, but they had a lot of injuries, even
that's a
more
lot.
than we talked about the Eagles having injury issues. They had a lot more.
Yeah.
And it's just about everybody, including, Darisaw, they shut him down. He was in and out, and they shut him down late in the season. O'Neal missed games. Kelly missed half of the season. Jackson missed 4 or 5 games. I think Will Fries might have been the only one who played most of the season. So it was really difficult. He's playing with guys like Brandell and Michael Juergens and, a bunch of backups. So, and they still had, remember, they had a difficult time because of the quarterback as well. So it was I think it was a tough year for everybody out there offensively. And unfortunately, he was one of the scapegoats for it.
Yeah, and a part of it potentially, but it's hard to tell how much. John, a couple questions left for you, brother. Do you think Chris Kuper, the hiring of Cooper, changes anything for Lane Johnson or Landon Dickerson, or is it part of their retirement calculus at all? What do you think?
No, I mean, I think Lane's going to come back, and he's sort of intimate. I know I saw Brian Balding, who's very close to Lane, say, he's going to give whomever comes in a chance. So that's very positive to me that I think I never thought Lane was going to walk away after missing the final 8 games. I still think he's not walking away. I don't think that changes anything. For Landon, I think it's purely about health, and I think ultimately, this happens a lot in the NFL where guys go through difficult seasons and they want to take time to recharge their batteries, and they're thinking about, do I really want to go through this again? And then it gets into April and May, and they're like, yeah, all right, I'm ready to go. And I think Landon will be back as well. So, but we'll see how it shakes out. I don't think Chris Cooper's going to have much of an impact on either decision.
John, this seems to be, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, this seems to be a Mannion guy. Is that a good sign? Is that, I don't know if maybe it is a Sirianni guy. I don't know. Maybe it's neither of them, and it's a collective. But is it a good sign potentially that Mannion might have some power in hiring an O-line coach? You know what I mean? Something that hasn't really been the case for the last several coordinators who were hired. Do you look at this as a Mannion hire, and is that a good thing?
Well, I think it's more of they did play together. Well, not play together. Chris was the coach there when Sean was still playing. As Sean was playing in Minnesota in 2023, as late as 2023. So they do know each other. But I think the bigger part is that, that's the scheme that they want to run, or want to ship towards, the McVay, Shanahan type stuff. I think, Sean, I'm sure, has a relationship with him, so I think that helps. But I think the scheme and the experience in the scheme they want to run is the more important part.
All right, John, good stuff. So the Eagles have officially replaced Jeff Stoutland. Two different guys to replace him, and both of them have other, or at least Mahaffey has some other duties as well. But the offensive line coach, John, the legendary offensive line coach and run game coordinator since I think 2017, I think he was, is gone and replaced. My friend, your final thought here on the hiring of Chris Kuper.
Yeah, I mean, change was coming, and this is, if you look at it individually, it may not look good, when you lose experienced coaches like Jason Michael and Jeff Stoutland. But again, if you're going to change, and change is sometimes, we always talk about everybody has shelf lives in this league, and sometimes the messaging isn't getting through like it once was. And you got to change the guard. That's sort of the NFL philosophy in coaching. Unfortunately, these guys are replaceable, and they're easier to replace than the players. So that's where you are in the stage of this, and we're going to see if these guys can develop. I mean, there was a lot of criticism in Nick's original staff for lack of experience, and
Yeah,
I'm sure there'll be a lot of criticism this time. It worked last time.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll work this time.
It's a young staff, man. 33, 35, 38. Chris Kuper's 43. It's a young group, John. Young group.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like we just said, Mike McDonald won a Super Bowl. He's 36 or 37 years old.
Damn, is he that young? Mike McDonald? Holy shit.
Yeah, third youngest coach to ever win a Super Bowl.
That's crazy.